nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Pioneer Town, Steve Bardwell. Oh, okay. Yucca Mesa, Tom Ziegert.
Here.
Landers, Dawn Johnson. Here. Joshua Tree, Mark Lundquist.
Here.
Flamingo Heights is vacant. Desert Heights, Pat Flanagan. Here. Wonder Valley, Teresa Seitz. Here. Morongo Valley, Gail Swearet. Here. Copper Mountain Mesa, Mary Helen Tuttle. Here.
He wasn't listening.
Pioneer Town, Steve Bardwell. About time.
Okay, item D, adoption of agenda. Everybody read the agenda? Do I hear a second? Any discussion?
I think it would be a good idea to include the names of the officials that are making presentations when possible. Like last, the battalion chief last month, to include his name in the minutes, I think that would be good.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. Thanks, Steve. Okay. I have a motion. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so moved. Approval of January 8th, 2018 minutes. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any discussion? Okay, so moved. Okay, memorial adjournments, we have none. Okay, right down to public safety reports. County fire, do we have, Tom Marshall is on the job tonight, he won't be there, he apologizes. How about Morongo Valley CSD? Jim, is that you, or? Jerry? Oh, Jim.
I introduced myself last month, but it's Gary Yearsley. I'm the new fire chief, and had a real interesting week this last week, so I'll go over the runs that we had for last month first. Our EMS calls were 45 with 11 non-EMS calls. And then on last Tuesday night at about 10:15, our unit was, our engine was coming back from a call and coming down 62, and the CHP flagged him over with a fatality accident that was there on the 62 highway by Forbes. So we had a long time with them getting that taken care of and out. So we are looking, we had also the next day, we had 6 calls while we were still working with that. So it was a pretty busy day.
Could you get that microphone working?
Thank you.
I thought it was working.
It was on.
It's not working.
Our technical advisor will take a look at it, hang on.
Can you hear me now? All right, Simon, you got this? You got to talk into it.
Okay, I don't see county fire, so Simon, you're up. Thank you. Simon Miller, CHP.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us, of course. We're happy to be here and serve the community. Most of you know me by first name, which is great. If you don't, Simon Miller, I'm the Public Information Officer for the Morongo Basin area. So we don't have a whole lot, but as you may know, King of the Hammers just finished up another year. It gets bigger every year, but as far as I know, we didn't have any major incidents because of King of the Hammers as we have in past years. So I think we're all very grateful to have been there and to have helped the community in that regard. I will also say, for future reference, we do continue to put on safety classes and courses for the Start Smart for teen drivers, Age Well for senior drivers, or getting better drivers, and things of that nature. So if you do follow us on Facebook or check our Facebook page every now and then, we have Instagram and Twitter as well, and I'll put that stuff out for availability when it comes, and also to the press so that they can disseminate that to you guys, and you'll know when those things are coming. We have a new commander here. As you may well know, Lieutenant Robles has retired. happily. And so we have Lieutenant Taylor Cooper, who's just started with us here in our area as of January 31st, took over command, so he'd like to address you now, and I'll give him some time, unless there's any questions for me. Very well, thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. Again, my name is Taylor Cooper. I'm the new commander here. Just a brief overview of who I am. I've been with the department now for over 23 years. I've had the luxury to work in several areas such as Riverside, Indio, San Gregonio Pass, Baldwin Park, and Madera. I think that's it, yeah. Yep, so I've been all over. Normally when you promote the department, they have you travel over the state, and every place you go, there's something unique and something different, and you learn and you meet a lot of great people. When Eric retired, the position came available. I talked to Lieutenant Robles, and to be honest, he said nothing but great things about Morongo Basin, that including the people here and the people that work at the office. So it was an easy decision for me to put in for it. I was very fortunate to get the position. I've been here now since January 31st, and I tell you, I've worked in a lot of places. Like I said, in Baldwin Park, which is on the east end of Los Angeles. I've worked in Madera, Riverside, which is one of the busiest offices in the entire state as far as call volume. And this is unique because everybody, for the most part, have said, thank you for your service. So that is refreshing to me because it shows that we have a great working relationship with the community and with the allied agencies as well. So my job is to continue that relationship with the community here. It's a beautiful valley. It kind of reminds me of Indio out in the desert. You got the beautiful landscape, a senior citizen community, and you have a lot of young people here. So one of the few things, we don't make a lot of changes when you transfer in. This is not a promotion for me. I've been a lieutenant now. This will be my 4th year come September. So it's not new, but this area is new. One of the things that we did in Indio, we had a lot of qualified retired people, and they didn't have a senior volunteer program. We had doctors, lawyers, judges that were retired. And we started a senior volunteer program in Indio, and we had so many people, we had to turn people away. And so one of the things I talked to Simon about it, and we're going to try and start a senior volunteer at the CHP office, because there's a lot of valuable skills that people here have, and it's just gone to waste. So we like to offer that. We're also going to establish an Explorer program. Basically, it's for the 14 to 20-year-olds to give them an opportunity to see what we do from the inside out, because a lot of people see us from the outside in. And that's something that we're going to start up in the next couple of months. So we look forward to working with you guys. I'm excited to be here. And this is, like I said, Eric raved nothing about Morongo Basin, so I'm excited to be here. So my number, you guys have the number at the office, and we're open. Basically, we're a 24/7 operation, so anything that we can do to continue that relationship with the community, we're all for it. So thank you for having me. I look forward to working with you guys.
Okay, I don't see anybody here from the sheriff. By the way, we have a new sheriff commander. His name is Trevis, Trevis, Newport, and he is catching up on paperwork, and I'm sure he'll be here next time. So, and Morongo Basin Ambulance, I don't see anybody here from Morongo Basin Ambulance, so we'll move on to item number H. Presentation. I want to preface this a little bit. There's a internet broadband consortium that approached the county, and this is a kind of an independent thing that they're trying to get broadband in areas that were designated by the government as underserved. And of course, you probably know if you live out in the outlying areas, this area is way underserved. So I've asked Blake Baxter, who's kind of a pro at this, to chime in with and take over for me and the county, and he's doing a very good job, and he's got a presentation tonight that I think will be very interesting and eye-opening on what the broadband situation is out here. So Blake?
Thank you, Mark.
You bet.
Do you want to turn on the projector? How's the volume? Okay. Talk louder. I am? Yes. Nobody told me that. Listen, my fee, yeah, I can fix my hair. Thank you. My public appearance fee is a totally different structure. We have to talk. As soon as the projector's on, we can get started. How about now? Yeah? Okay. Okay, great. So, as Mark said, my name is Blake Baxter. I'm a Joshua Tree resident. And, is this one better? Oh, yeah, listen to that. Can I put it in the, is it better?
You are awful mean.
Well, I can hold it, but I got this other thing I want to use. I don't
Why
like
don't
it.
you just hold it like karaoke?
Well, because I can do that. I can do that.
Sing this whole presentation?
Strangers in the night. Okay, all right. Here we go. Is that okay? Can you hear me? Okay. So again, my name's Blake. I'm a Joshua Tree resident. I no longer work in the industry, but I spent a lot of years in telecommunications and network technology. I wasn't an expert in wireless or service provider, but I certainly understand a lot of the principles and hopefully can give you a little clarification maybe on the challenges we have out here. The challenges in rural areas are definitely unique. Somewhere between 34% and 55% of all rural households in the United States lack proper broadband internet access. The low estimate, 34%, comes from the FCC, and I can tell you that it's incorrect because I've been reviewing their maps for coverage, and most of it is not right. So you're going to be surprised, and I'm going to show you a way you can check this yourself. You'll probably be surprised to find out that the FCC or the state of California considers you to be served by 12, 25, 50 meg wireline internet service when you have none at all. And we're going to talk about what you can do to submit some information to the state anyway to correct that. So the agenda is I'm going to go through a quick terminology primer. Bear with me if you know this already. I'll try to do it quickly. I'll talk a little bit about types of internet access, the pros and cons. Then specifically going into coverage for the Morongo Basin, what works, what doesn't. I'll talk briefly about the consortium. There are 19 in the state of California. They're a state-funded consortium designed specifically to try to get broadband internet access into rural areas in Riverside and San Bernardino counties. Then the California Public Utilities Commission, which administers the funding through the California Advanced Services Fund that the IERBC works to get distributed through the state. So they work together. Then we'll talk about steps you can take and a little bit about what's coming in the future. I've talked to some internet service providers who are planning on bringing new service coverage to the area. I'll talk about the dates and what we can hopefully expect, and then that'll do it. So, first of all, an ISP, I'll say ISP, that's your internet service provider. So if you're on Frontier, or you're on Spectrum, or you are on Mojave Wi-Fi or FlashByte, they are your ISP. Bandwidth is the maximum amount of data per second that your internet connection allows. It is typically expressed as download and upload. Download is usually much higher than upload. Upload is when you're requesting something. Download is when you're receiving something. So when you're streaming movies on Netflix, that's a download. If I click pause, that's an upload. Usually uploads are very small commands. They're very small bits of data, where download is generally much more. Most people think of download and upload as your speed, your bandwidth as your speed. It's only part of the equation. The other half of the equation, which is very important, is your latency. Latency is the amount of time it takes for a packet to leave your computer, reach a server, and then have you receive a response. It's called a ping, and there are other protocols that are used. The most basic one is a ping to determine that. This is important. So if you have 100, let's say you have 1,000 pounds of material that you need to move across town, and you have a truck. The truck can only go 40 miles an hour, but it'll take all 1,000 pounds. So I put all 1,000 pounds on the truck drives away. Even though it's only going 40 miles an hour, it feels like it's very fast because I've unloaded everything. But if I've got 1,000 pounds of material and I want to move it on the back of a motorcycle, that motorcycle may be able to go 80 miles an hour, but it takes 20 trips. The motorcycle's faster, but it takes longer. because the motorcycle has less bandwidth than the truck, but it's faster. So latency is very important, and that's typically expressed in milliseconds. So you can ping a server on the East Coast and receive a reply generally in about 50 milliseconds, even out here. As latency starts going up, your service starts degrading. You can have great bandwidth, but very high latency, and it feels slow. And that's satellite. Satellite's going to give you 15, 20, 25, 30 meg, but the latency is like 700, 800 milliseconds. It's going up to space and then back down to Earth and getting on the internet. So the round trip times are very high. That's why satellite works for some things and not for others. Broadband. What do we mean by broadband? It's internet access that is always on and faster than dial-up. That's the general definition. Anything over 200K is actually considered broadband. The FCC, for the purposes of issuing grants, considers it 25.3, and that's a new definition they just adopted I think in 2016. The state of California considers it to be 6 down and 2 up. And again, that's for the purpose of issuing grants. So if I'm a provider going into a new area and I want to get a grant from the state of California to provide broadband internet service, I got to be able to at least do 6.2. If I'm applying for federal money, I got to be able to do 25.3. However, the FCC has been granting a lot of exceptions lately. I'm going to talk about one of them that's coming up here. And then radio spectrum. I'm not an amateur radio operator. I don't really know that much about it. I do know that public utilities, like Verizon Wireless, for example, they ride on radio spectrum that's protected. They lease it from the FCC, and nobody else is supposed to be using it. That limits or eliminates interference on the radio channel. Stuff like your cordless phone and your home Wi-Fi, they ride on public radio spectrum. It's shared, and it's subject to interference. Why that's important, we'll get to it in a minute. 2 of the providers in this area do ride on public radio spectrum. And that is generally speaking, when your internet service slows down, if you're on Mojave Wi-Fi or FlashByte, that's usually the reason. It's interference from other sources. Okay, so types of internet access. We talked about it a little. DSL, Frontier is the provider for DSL in this area. It used to be Verizon. It's a very, very old technology. It rides over a pair of copper cables that are your phone line. It actually rides over the same physical infrastructure that a telephone call would. So if you have phone service to your home, you may be able to get DSL, but there is a distance limitation to DSL. It does not go as far as voice. So even though you can place phone calls from your home, it doesn't necessarily mean you can get data service via DSL. 10,000 feet is where it really starts to drop off. So you have to have a physical proximity to the central office or a cabinet that has a repeater in it. Cable is Time Warner or Spectrum now in the area. I think how many people in the room actually have cable or DSL? All right, how many people are on Mojave Wi-Fi or FlashByte? How many people have no internet service at home? Okay. How many people use their mobile phone for internet service? Okay, great. Thank you. How many people have satellite? Okay. Satellite, I believe it's called Viasat today, not ComSat. They took over Exceed, who had taken over Wild Blue. Again, satellite is very high bandwidth, but very high latency. If you're like a database programmer and you're doing a lot of puts against a database, in other words, you're clicking and you're sending information to a database and you're expecting to get a response saying the database received the information, high latency is going to kill you. Right? You're sending very, very, very small packets of information, but you're sending a lot of them. And it's got to go up to the satellite and back down and hop on the internet. If you're streaming movies, high latency may not be a problem. You'll notice it when you're loading the stream, and when you're pressing pause or play or reverse, your commands may seem to take a long time before before it responds. But it should be, once the stream starts, it's getting all that bandwidth, it's getting 30 meg, but it's just delayed, right? So satellite works pretty well for things like streaming. It works great if you're in an area where you have no facilities at all. You have no cable, you have no phone line, you can't get Mojave Wi-Fi or FlashByte. You're going to be glad satellite's around. Fixed terrestrial wireless is Mojave Wi-Fi and FlashByte. What these folks do, and they're lifesavers in a lot of areas, they lease internet backbone service. They lease their internet service from other providers. So Mojave Wi-Fi from Time Warner, FlashByte from a company called LCS Servers. That increases your costs right? Because they're paying for their own internet service where Time Warner and Frontier have their own, right? They're public utilities. That's the good news. Is the microphone still okay? All right. And what they do is they buy commercially available hardware and they set up wireless networks, bless you, in the area, right? So they basically just stand up a private network. They lease internet servers from a company like Time Warner, and they point a dish on your house at a tower that they've set up somewhere using hardware that I could go out and buy if I wanted to as well. The reason why they're susceptible to interference is there's a lot of other devices that people can buy. Let's say somebody with 10 or 20 acres wants to set up their own private camera network on their property so they can look at the far corners of their property. They might be riding the same radio spectrum as your Mojave Wi-Fi signal. As soon as they turn it on, yes, they may.
Recently, we've had
And it happens a lot.
And that's what happens. They were looking for the source that was sucking it all up.
That's right, because they ride in the 5 gigahertz radio spectrum,
Yeah.
2.4 and 5. So if you have a cordless phone at home, it used to be 2.4, or your base station, they all used to be 2.4, and then the FCC opened up 5 gigahertz to commercial use, and so it's all either 2.4 or 5 gigahertz in that range. Same is true of all the equipment they use to set up their network. So what they'll do is they'll check the line from your location to their tower, and then they'll go out in a vehicle and they'll drive around looking for the interference, and then they'll change the channel or modulate the frequency slightly within that range to get your signal open again. And that's why that service sometimes has issues. It's susceptible to interference. One really good thing about both these companies is their latency is very low. Then there's mobile wireless, Verizon Wireless, AT&T, et cetera. That's using your phone or Jetpack, as a mobile hotspot. Out here, they're actually they're pretty good. They have low latency, high bandwidth, but they have data caps. So if you're planning on watching Netflix every night, within 3 or 4 days, you're going to get to your data cap. Now, they all say that they provide unlimited plans now, but those unlimited plans deprioritize your data at 22 gig of data per month, which is only, depending on what movie you're watching, could be 3 or 4 movies, right? So then they deprioritize your data. So during busy times, your internet connection over them is going to seem very slow. During times when it's not busy, it'll speed up again. And then there's fiber. Does anybody have fiber in the room? Yeah. So Frontier used to be Verizon. Fiber is again, it's wireline service like cable. It's a fiber that runs through the ground and into your home. It's very fast, very low latency. It's the latest technology. It's just very expensive to run. And in rural areas, both cable and fiber don't make a lot of sense. If I'm Frontier and I can run a fiber drop into an apartment building, a brand new apartment building that was just built and has 100 units and they're already all pre-wired, all I got to do is plug into the closet in the basement and I've got 100 new customers, I'm going to do that as opposed to going out and wiring 100 customers across 2.5 and 5 acre properties in the desert. Right? The cost isn't there for them. And if you've called Time Warner to ask for service and they told you did not have service, you may have asked them what it would take and they probably gave you an estimate. The estimate for my home was $25,000. So I didn't do it. All right. All right, so I just went through all the pros and cons. See, this is what happens. I jump ahead of myself. So I went over this already. Frontier is federal grant money under the Connect America Fund to provide a minimum of 10 down, 1 up service by 2020. This is one of the exceptions the FCC granted. Instead of 25.3, they're going to give them money to provide 10.1. And I'll show you on the map here in a moment, there's a lot of places where you can see that service is supposed to be coming. The map showing coverage for the grant is very confusing, and we're trying to get more information from Frontier. Mark and I are working with the consortium to get a meeting with them to come in and give us their actual plans, because we're hoping if they're going to be done by 2020 that they've started mapping out what they're going to do. If they don't do it, they lose the grant. They have to do 90% of their commitment to get the money. And then there's a competitive local exchange carrier called Pacific Lightwave down in Palm Springs. A competitive local exchange carrier is a utility. It's a term that goes back to the days when they deregulated the telephone system and they allowed local companies to jump into local telephone service. But nowadays it applies to internet service providers. And they have stated that they will start a 50 meg LTE 5G pilot program in Morongo Basin in 2018. We're also talking to them on a regular basis and tracking that. That's very exciting. They will be on protected spectrum. So it will be fixed terrestrial wireless, just like Mojave Wi-Fi and FlashBite, but much less susceptible, in theory, to any interference because they're riding on very expensive leased radio spectrum. So it should be protected. 5G, you've probably heard, is the latest wireless technology. It should be good, but we need to see more of them actually, doing it. They do have a repeater up in San Gorgonio. We know they're set up for it. They're the internet service provider for Eisenhower Medical. They wired all the doctors' homes to the hospitals. They have a lot of, they have a good reputation down the hill, so we'll see what happens. So the Inland Empire Regional Broadband Consortium, there are 19 consortiums in the state of California that were set up by the California Advanced Services Fund. Their job is to take the Advanced Services Fund grant money and get it into rural areas. That's what they do. So these are the folks that brought Pacific Lightwave up to meet with us and have a conversation. These are the folks that are working to get Frontier over here to tell us what they're doing with their grant money, and they're a good group. So coverage in the Morongo Basin. This is the broadband availability map, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump over to the map live. All right, this is what the state of California looks at when somebody applies for grant money to wire or provide service in a rural area. This is the first thing to look at to determine if there's coverage. So what I'm going to do here, and you can do this, on the piece of paper that I put up front there's a link to this. Anybody can do this. You go in here and you click on the little house. You put in your address. And there it is. So the little house is my house. So this is really interesting. So the green area, and let me go to layers so you can see what we're talking about here. You see down here at the bottom? Down here, wireline status. All right, green is served, yellow is slow service, red is no service. And then areas that are blank, according to the 2010 census, are unpopulated. So this data goes back 8 years. And if I do this, you'll see the extent of this problem. Okay, so here's the Desert View Conservation Area, Section 6 right here. Wired. Wireline, 25 meg service is what they say. This is the Manor, this is White Feather area, here's Highway 62. Right, here's Monument Manor. They're saying the whole thing is covered by wireline broadband internet service. So either Time Warner or Frontier told the FCC that it's there. Now, how do they get away with that? Well, one way they get away with it is it's based on census blocks. So if there's a census block with, say, 37 homes in it, they only have to wire one of them, and they can claim the whole census block. Well, there is a census block with 37 homes. It actually covers half my property on a diagonal line, and it comes all the way up here through Section 6 into the Manor, and there is a place on here where you can actually do this, census blocks. And I don't know if you saw it, but I can see the dotted lines? All right, so here's the census block right here. This little diagonal. That's half my lot. The other half of it is part of this much larger block that goes all the way down to Section 6 and wraps around and touches Highway 62 in town. So somewhere in there, right, somebody's got internet service, broadband internet service, and they're claiming the whole block. Meanwhile, if I were to say, look, I don't have service, they go, yeah, you do. Half your property has service. Meanwhile, your neighbor 2 lots over doesn't, but that neighbor does. This is unpopulated. It isn't, right? And I can tell you, Lorraine, you're over here. Yeah. Yeah. They're saying you're covered, right? You're in the green area. I'm guessing, yeah, it is weird. It's actually not that unusual. It's very not weird. And where does all this crazy information come from? And here's a spot that I want to show you that we can look at as an example. So I'm going to take this out right here, and I'm going to, right here is Connect America Fund supported locations. See the diagonal lines? This is where Frontier got grant money to provide broadband internet service by the end of 2020. 1, 2, 3 properties. Right? But no grant money to do the rest of it. Because the FCC only considered these properties not served. And based on the 2010 census, they considered all these other properties, including the wilderness up here next to the park, served. So Frontier was able to get grant money for those lots only. And if I back up a little, you'll see what a problem this is. These are the areas that got grant money. We're getting up in, landers up in here. And these are all the areas where they didn't. Because according to the FCC maps, see that little shape again? Right there? There it is. Right there. Right there next to my house. So, what does that mean? Well, it probably doesn't mean much. Frontier would be insane to go in and provide service to those 4 lots and none of the surrounding area. It doesn't make any sense, right? So that's why we want to have a chat with them. We just want to make sure that even though, just because they're getting grant money for these areas doesn't mean they're not going to serve the whole area. But this shows where they got the grant money for. So by 2020, they should be doing that. But again, this is just an example of things that you can do here. So let me zoom back in. The red areas are not served. The green areas are served. You can go here, you type in your address, and then there's a little radio button here. You click that. And then there's a little radio tower button here. You click that. And you can go in, and it'll tell you. This half of my property on the diagonal line is served by 24/2 internet service from Frontier. They reported it as served. I guarantee you it's not served. There's nothing under the ground up there. Or 6-1. They actually reported both. And here's the other part about the great thing about this map. Fixed wireless would be Mojave Wi-Fi or FlashBite, one of whom I'm using. No providers found. Because they're a private company and they don't report their information to the state or the FCC. They don't have to. They don't take public money. All right. So, what you can do is you can go to this website, you can click on the little house, you can put in your address, and then when you get the results, you can tell the state if it's incorrect or not. And every November, they take all the data they received and they update the map. And I know this is true because in January the map did get updated. Because I was watching it like a hawk. Okay. I'm doing all right? Yeah, okay. So, okay, not much longer. So here's what you do. You go onto this map, you put in your address, you under results, you click on send feedback. Right there. And this little survey comes up. Is internet service other than satellite available at this address? If you're getting more than 200K, the answer is yes. So if you are using Mojave Wi-Fi or FlashBite, technically the answer is yes. And that's okay. That's okay. You say yes. Do you subscribe to broadband? Yes, I do. I have Mojave Wi-Fi. What is your current broadband internet service provider? If you are in a census block that's claimed as served, this will be a pull-down menu asking you to select which one. I don't show as served on the map, so I get to type it in, right? So I would type it in. And then what is the technology type? Fixed wireless, right? So I've got Mojave Wi-Fi, I'm telling them something they don't know. Fixed wireless, you go to next. Use speedtest.net to measure speeds of your fixed service and tell us what the results are. How many people run speed tests at home? All right, so you know how to run a speed test. Personally, I use Megapath. The reason I use Megapath is the one that Mojave Wi-Fi wants me to use. You can also choose which cities, all the way as far away as Amsterdam, to test against, and it saves your results history, which you can export as an Excel spreadsheet. So when I personally am having trouble with my internet service, I usually wait a little while, right? I don't call them right away because I know it's susceptible to interference. But if after 30 minutes, an hour, it's really degraded, and I mean like less than half what I'm expecting, I will go here, I will run 5 tests. Right? That gives you a sample, and you can export the results and you can email them right to them. I do not recommend doing this with FlashByte. Because they don't want you to run speed tests on their network. They have their reasons, but Mojave Wi-Fi does. But I have heard of people who have been told that their service would be canceled if they continue to send speed test results to FlashByte. And I've seen the emails. But I use Megapath. You can use speedtest.net. If you just Google speed test, Google has their own speed test. You can use anything. But do not use the test that's on the piece of paper that I brought in, the survey. There's a paper survey that does the same thing we're doing right now. It says use something called CalSpeed. I'm going to tell you why not to use CalSpeed in a minute, but do not use CalSpeed as your speed test. All right, so you type in what you got. Now, if it's more than 6 meg download, don't bother doing this because the state of California considers you served. But if you're getting less than 6 meg, keep going. So you can even put 5.1. I'm getting, 5.1 is what speed test said. I got 2 meg upload. Remember, there's upload and download. When you run the test, it'll show you which is which, right? Download, upload, latency. Remember the one I was talking about? Speed test plus Megapath shows it to you, latency and jitter. These are extremely important. You can have great download and upload speeds, but if these two things aren't working, it's not going to work. So you type it in there. Which broadband internet, this is very important, which broadband internet service providers told you they were unable to provide service at this address? This is where you're going in and saying, Time Warner is saying I'm covered and I'm not. Frontier is saying I'm covered and I'm not. Now, again, at my location, we don't have any listed. So I click Other, and I actually just type it in there, right? But if you're at an address that shows as served by wireline, in the drop-down boxes will be the providers that said you were served. So Time Warner will show up there and Frontier will show up there. You say, these guys that told me that I cannot get service here, even though they told the FCC in the state of California that they could. And then it's a place for additional comments. I usually say, my address is shown as wireline served on your map. It is not. Very direct, right? And then you submit. That will send information to the state of California that will be collected in November. And they update the map. And it helps. It does help. So it's not something that's going to get you results right away. It's not going to clean up your internet service right away, but it is something that you can do. Now, if you don't want to use the web-based survey tool that I just showed you, there's a paper survey tool at the front desk that does the same thing. It looks like this. And you see all the same questions. This is actually, in my opinion, almost better, right? Because you can just write it in your address. Is broadband service available? Do you subscribe to service? Who is your current broadband provider, right? You just type them in right there. Are you satisfied with your broadband internet service? Probably no. Then it says, download and install the application calspeed.org and record the results here. Please do not do this. Calspeed.org, I'm going to tell you why. Thank you, though. CalSpeed is a great application, actually. It was developed by Cal State University, Monterey Bay for the state, and it tests a lot of things other than download and upload. But one thing that it does report is the last service provider in line. If you're on Mojave Wi-Fi or FlashByte, remember, they're leasing their internet service from somebody else. So if you're on Mojave Wi-Fi and you run the CalSpeed app on your desktop, it will report Time Warner as your internet service provider. If you're trying to correct that information, that's not the information you want the state getting. Okay? Now, if you're on Time Warner or Frontier and you want to say to the state, hey, they're not providing the level of service that they say they're providing, use CalSpeed, because it'll give a bunch of data. Yes, thank you. I agree. I agree. So you run a speed test, right? On your own, not using CalSpeed. You report the download speed and the upload speed. And remember, it has to be less than 6 meg. It could be 5.9. Lower would be better. And then you say here, which broadband providers said that they were unable to provide service in your address? Spectrum, Time Warner, Frontier. They both did. I tried them both. First, they signed me up. And then they came out to the house, everyone's nodding, and said, oh, yeah, no, we're wrong, we can't do it here, right? They'll sign you up, but, right? Because their system, their online system that automatically takes all your account information and all your data so they can sell it on the open market, is probably using the same information they submitted to the FCC. Said you were served when you weren't. So you put them in there, you have to sign it, put your email, date, and your name. I've got a bunch of them here tonight. If you want to fill them out tonight and give them to me, I will send them en masse directly to this gentleman who I talk to at this point several times a week. I'll send it right to him. Otherwise, please take one and feel free to do it yourself. But remember, if you're on Mojave Wi-Fi or FlashByte, please do not use CalSpeed. If you're getting less than 6 meg and the map says you're served, please complete the survey, either online or the paper survey. That'll help them correct the information. All right, so I am going to go as quickly as I can at this point. Oh, so there's also, I have a piece of paper up there with links on it, and the 3 different ways of submitting information are all here, the hard copy, the online survey, and CalSpeed. There's also a CalSpeed mobile app, but I don't really get this. This is if you're testing your mobile, like your cell phone's internet access. So if you wanted to test your home-based internet service using a mobile device, you would disable cellular data on your phone, turn on Wi-Fi, and then test it, it would work. Otherwise, you're just testing your cellular data. All right. So I showed you that. This is what it looks like. This is why we're having challenges. That's the way you provide feedback. Don't use CalSpeed. These are supposed to be hidden. There's the online survey. Again, send feedback. Paper survey. Again, I use Megapath or speed test. Again, some ISPs will have you run a speed test when you're having issues. However, if you're not currently experiencing problems, it is not recommended you proactively contact your ISP to inquire as to why your results do not match capacity. What you buy is a package cap, not a minimum, right? So if you bought 6 meg per month, you're supposed to be getting 6 meg and you're getting 4, and you call, they may say, yeah, we'll try to fix it. There might be some interference. It might improve later. But on any of those contracts, they're under no obligation to provide you any minimum bandwidth at all. Read your Time Warner, Frontier, Mojave Wi-Fi, FlashByte contracts. Because, I mean, the idea being that if you're not happy, you'll go to the open market and get another provider. Of course, in rural areas, that's more difficult than it sounds. Well, I mean, I lived in downtown LA. There was only one provider. So, all right, so in conclusion, broadband internet in rural areas has its own challenges. There's a lack of infrastructure. The distance between customers makes it challenging for providers to run new service. These costs are passed on to the homeowners, and those without wireline service may have limited options. Providers can apply for grants. State and federal coverage maps help determine the eligibility, and us completing surveys when the information is wrong will help improve things over time. There should be new options in the near future from Frontier and hopefully from Pacific Lightwave. But again, if you're experiencing frustration and dissatisfaction with your internet service, you're not alone. Probably, I'm going to say, half of all rural households in the entire country do not have adequate internet service, and this is going to have to change for reasons from telemedicine to emergency alerts. You look at Santa Rosa or Santa Barbara or Ventura, or places in Northern California in the wine country where they're investing in air raid sirens to warn residents, investing in 2018 in new air raid sirens to warn residents about wildfires because the next generation IP-based mobile device alert systems are not working in rural areas. This is a big problem that needs to be fixed. I think that's it. Do we have time for a few questions? Mark. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on. We got the light.
What is jitter? You talked about latency, but I saw on one of your charts, you talked about jitter, and I didn't see a definition for that.
That relates to the consistency of the system. So it's measuring an average download, upload, and latency. But inconsistency or variation in the signal as well, and that's jitter. High latency and high jitter are both bad. David?
Hello. We had a different problem, just to give you another perspective. We've been in our house since '86, and it had cable TV service right to it. It's an odd situation, but we're in Panorama Heights area. And we had it removed because we didn't watch cable TV. And then in 2010, when I was going to broadband through Time Warner, I was having to argue with a man in India telling me that I did not have internet service capability because the coaxial cable was less than 100 feet in front of my window, and I knew where it was, but
Right.
they explained to me that Time Warner couldn't do it. So I had to go through Earthlink, subscribe through Earthlink. Earthlink did it, and then I became a Time Warner person. I'm just saying that the bureaucracy goes both ways. It's very
Right.
confusing.
Right, the data that's out there is that they rely on to determine if they're providing service, that they provide to the federal and state government to determine grant writing for new service. The data it needs to be groomed massively. They're working on it, but I do know where it comes from. There's a private consulting company in New Jersey that does it for the whole country. So, that the FCC contracts. Nothing against New Jersey, sorry. Yeah.
So these companies like Flashbyte and Mojave Wi-Fi, who regulates them?
So they're regulated like any business, I suppose. You know, you can complain. You can try to find somewhere in the contract where they may be in breach, but they're not regulated like public utilities. They're private companies. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword. If they weren't here, a lot of people wouldn't have any service at all. Right. But, yeah. All right. I'll be around if anybody wants to fill out a survey tonight and give it to me. I'll send them all in. Otherwise, please do. What? This? No, I won't. You're using it, right? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you, Blake. That was very informative. And yeah, make sure you pick up those forms if you've got internet problems and fill those out. That'll help the consortium move forward with trying to get some better service up here. Okay, let me see. We're going to move on now to reports by members of the MAC, and we'll start with Dawn at the end there.
Can you hear me? No? How's that? Better? Okay. Dawn Johnson, Landers rep. It's good to be back. I've been away for a while. Anyways, I don't have too much to report for Landers other than voting will take place for the 2018-2020 term for board members at the Landers Association meeting on March 10th at 3 p.m. And also, the Landers Thrift Store is open every Saturday from 10 to 2. They have a lot of great things. Donations are welcome. It's at the Belfield Hall in Landers. And that's all I've got for tonight.
Teresa Teresa Seitz, Wonder Valley. That was a long time ago. We had a community cleanup on Saturday, January 20th, and had a great turnout. A group of volunteers prowled the roads, picking up everything from tires to televisions and ferrying them to the roll-offs. We collected 5.4 tons of trash and debris and 4.7 tons of tires. Many thanks to Land Use Services and the Supervisor's Office for making this happen. January 20th was also my first day as coordinator of the Wonder Valley Community Center. Changes have been happening slowly but steadily, and we're open regularly Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from 9 to 2. We had a food distribution this morning and served 70 households for a total of 103 people. We still don't have a fire department in Wonder Valley, nor are we able to use the kitchen in the community center due to the same water issues that we've had for a while. Both of these situations have a continuing negative effect on our community. Ivy Pachota read from her book titled Wonder Valley at the Palms Restaurant last Thursday night. We had a great turnout and are grateful to Ms. Pachota and to the Palms for hosting. And this coming Wednesday, February 14th, from 11 to 1 at the Wonder Valley Community Center, we have a meeting on help for victims of sexual abuse and domestic violence. Iris Robertson, a victim's advocate from the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office, Patrick Clark from Morongo Basin Sexual Assault Services, and Susanna Barnett, the Executive Director of Morongo Basin Unity Home, will present on victim advocacy and resources for supporting the survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. I invite everyone to attend. There's flyers on the desk, and I hope to see some of you there. The community meeting the next one is Saturday, March 10th from 11 to 1 p.m. It's a special meeting to fill out our fundamental plan surveys. And these employ SWOT analysis, which is new to many of us. So we'll be looking at how that applies to our community and how best to cover the key areas of community concern. And for everything else that's happening in Wonder Valley, please visit wondervalley.org. Thank you.
I'm Steve Bardwell from the Pioneer Town area. Several things that are on our radar now. Just this recent publication by the Department of Interior that the DRECP is going to be reconsidered. There's a very short-term comment period that's open, and we are, many people up there are very interested in encouraging the supervisors to express their opposition to reopening consideration of the DRECP. We're also very interested in seeing the county adopt the renewable energy conservation element of the general plan. The teeth of it were taken out at the time that they first, that the county adopted the RECE. Locally, in the Pipes Canyon area, we're continuing to track an application for a campground. We're beginning to call it a trailer park, since it consists of what they're proposing to do is put in 35 trailers on this site right adjacent to the monument. The application is yet to be accepted, but it is still in the works. There's been a confusion with the land use services in that they lost the emails, all the email letters and comments that were by a planner who left service with the county. We're also tracking and understand that very soon the water line is going to, a bid will be, a solicitation for bids for installation of the water line up to serve Pioneer Town is supposedly going to be happening very soon. So haven't seen an exact date on that, but we're looking forward to that happening. Thank you.
Tom Ziegert with Yucca Mesa. The Yucca Mesa Improvement Association is looking for a new volunteer to take over our Yucca Mesa website. Let me know if you're interested. Every month we have a fourth Friday potluck at 6 p.m. Join us this month if you want. And our center is available, the Yucca Mesa Community Center is available for events and projects should anyone need to use it for that. Our next board meeting will be the first Monday of March at 6 p.m., which is when the usual board meetings occur. Thank you.
Yeah, Mark Lundquist from Joshua Tree, and I've been dealing with all the problems that people have on this. That's what I do on a daily basis. But specific to Joshua Tree, we've had some problems, and you probably have heard about it in Monument Manor with people shortcutting. When the line backs up from the park, they use the dirt roads of Monument Manor to shortcut, and they're using Waze or a Google mapping program. And they shortcut the line, and it creates some real problems. It even creates backing traffic up in those roads. So We've asked Public Works to put some signs out there. They did it. Unfortunately, the sign just simply states that it's a non-maintained county road. We asked them to go one step further on it, so they are replacing those signs with signs that actually say no access to the national park, and those should be up shortly. So they've improved those at our request. There's several projects coming along, and they're on the Board of Education, I'm wrapped up with that too, but yeah. The Board of Supervisors, as Steve mentioned, the pipeline that's been waiting for about 10 years to go is going out to bid. They've approved the engineering on it, and hopefully that'll be happening in the next couple of years. The other thing is there's some projects that's on Public Works' radar. I don't have any dates yet, but it's going to be soon. They're going to improve and repave Alta Loma, I believe, from, gosh, I can't remember the name of the street, all the way going east. And it should all the way intersect with Park Boulevard. And Park Boulevard is on the schedule for repaving from Park until Alta Loma. It will be one project. They'll be tearing that up completely right down to the dirt and redoing it right from the dirt all the way up to the surface. And the next project after that will be from Alta Loma all the way to the park entrance, and that'll be a chip seal. So those projects are coming up when the weather is in the right temperature range for doing those projects. And that's about it for Joshua Tree.
Gail Swart, Morongo Valley, CSD. Our next CSD meeting is Tuesday, February 20th at 7 p.m. at Covington Park. Caltrans will be there again. There are quite a few people in Morongo Valley that are not happy about how the barrier construction is going in our valley. Some places are good, but they're leaving really long stretches with no protection, and people are very concerned about that. Caltrans will be out on that Tuesday to talk to us again. I don't know how much good it'll do, but if anybody is concerned about that, please join us for that meeting. Also, the light has been put in at Bella Vista and Highway 62, if you've noticed as you're going down to the low desert perhaps. The light is there. It's not working yet, but it will be at some point. So just to make everybody aware that there will be a light there that they might have to stop at. Thank you.
Mary Helen Tuttle, Copper Mountain Mesa. You may have been hearing on the radio that we are host to High Desert Test Kitchens on the second Monday of the month. Second Saturday, after our board meeting, Linda Sibio is holding it's an interactive class, and I'm sorry I don't have a description for you. It makes you a better actress, I believe, an actor. We have yoga Sundays, 9 a.m., and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. That's going pretty well. And of course, our first Saturday breakfast, so come on out. I don't know, Bonnie, you didn't come anymore, and we only had Steve and Gail.
Only Steve and Gail. Bonnie didn't come.
Steve's the milk man, Tom was there. Yeah.
You don't have a lot of leeway in small communities if you don't. Okay, Pat Flanagan, Desert Heights, and I'm actually going to give you a very short update on what Steve Bardwell was talking about, just to give you a little more information. And somehow or another, I'm going to figure out, oh, that's this, okay. Okay, I'm going to do slideshow from start, and then this. Yep, okay. Many of you have heard about the DRECP, the Desert Renewable Energy and Conservation Plan, which was many years in the making, and which we've all hoped would not be a problem for our rural areas, but in fact, that's not necessarily true. The county, in updoing their general plan, decided several years ago to include a renewable energy and conservation element. That's called the RECE or RECE, something like that. It depends upon. And many of us worked on that to give them information. Supervisor Ramos was the supervisor who asked to put a moratorium on utility scale solar in the desert until this had come about. And it amended, in passing that on August 8th, they eliminated the section 410 and its subsections, and those referred to an issue. They said to take this back to the Planning Commission because they hadn't heard it. So what they ended up, what the county adopted was Goal 4. The county will establish a new era of sustainable energy production and consumption in the context of sound resource conservation and renewable energy development practices. And the county will continue its efforts to meet or exceed state greenhouse gas reduction goals by encouraging renewable energy development that will be compatible with the natural environment and the integrity of unincorporated communities. Are we an unincorporated community? Yes. Have we had some problems? Yes. What they left out and wanted to send back as is to the Planning Commission because they hadn't seen it is the Policy 410, which would prohibit utility-oriented renewable energy project development on sites that would create adverse impacts on the quality of life or economic development opportunities in existing unincorporated communities. That's important for us. It would prohibit development also in the rural living land use districts throughout the county of renewable energy projects, and prohibit development of utility-oriented projects within the boundaries of existing community plans. Raise your hand, we have one here. And established exclusion rates in the development code regulations for renewable energy development. These are all very important if we don't have to want to keep going through and arguing not to get large utility-scale solar developments within the Morongo Basin, within the Lucerne Valley, within Newberry Springs and the Daggett area, which I'm particularly concerned about now. Our main problem, if you don't notice yet, is that we live on linear sand dunes, and if you take the vegetation off those sand dunes and the wind blows, you're going to breathe it. And so far, the county has not really paid attention to this, and there are no monitors for the Air Quality Management District to be able to monitor and know what's going on. So now, 6 months ago, the Board of Supervisors directed that Policy 410 and subsections be brought to the Planning Commission for further study. We're still waiting. Terry Rahal, Planning Director, says that Section 410 will not be going to the Planning Commission as it was when it was presented with the renewable energy and conservation element in August 2017. It has been revised. There will be different options that the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors can pick and choose from to create the final version of 510. The language protecting community plan areas and rural living is gone. How did they do that? No, I don't need the internet for this. Okay, thank you. So where we had thought for the last 6 months that 410 would be brought back as directed to the Planning Commission and then adopted by the Board of Supervisors after study, it turns out that's not happening. And we're asking, many of us, that people show up and at the various, tomorrow is one of them, Board of Supervisors meetings, and in the comment periods, please ask to have that done exactly the way the Board of Supervisors said. Bring it back to the Planning Commission as is. Meanwhile, Lucerne Valley now has 3 projects totaling one with a substation of 2,817 acres that straddle County Highway 247, which is a scenic highway, plus state lands, which also straddle this Highway 247 of 2,850. So there's nearly 6,000 acres of proposed solar projects. We will breathe that dust because that's the way the wind blows. Newberry Springs has 2 proposed projects totaling 5,533 acres. That's very troubling, and at the same time, on February 2nd, 2018, it was announced that the Bureau of Land Management and the Fish and Wildlife Service will be reviewing all actions that could, get the way this is worded, potentially burden the development or use of domestically produced energy resources in the DRECP. Huh? We want to be sure they get as much utility out as they can. So this is where the wind blows and where the dust goes. This particular area, the soils have been analyzed. It concerns Lucerne Valley, goes all the way up to Newberry Springs. You can see I've pointed arrows there. Every place in red is on a dust bowl. All you have to do is take the vegetation off and the roots no longer hold it together. And the A's there tell you where the monitoring stations are, and none of them are in the areas that are of concern to us. This is where the 5,666 acres of proposed solar projects in the Lucerne Valley area are, and the colors there show which are the names of the projects. And then in the upper left-hand corner, that is the state lands project. So that purple line is the community service area for Lucerne Valley. They won't be able to live there were that to take place. They could not live there. They could not breathe. Newberry Springs, I don't know if you're familiar with the Daggett Triangle in Newberry Springs. The Daggett Triangle at the pointy end is Barstow, almost, and then just a little bit east of that. And the Katy Mountains are at the far end. And you can see the linear dunes. Can you see the linear dunes? I've made a sign there. And the sand source is the Mojave River. And these people have 2 projects planned for 5,533 acres, which would essentially take most of their area. Why is the county letting those be applied for? They wouldn't be able to had 410 been passed. This is what would happen with the DRECP. This is the community service area. That's the purple line. Those are the different, within that, they're the different land ownerships. All of those would be up for grabs in a way that I can't even imagine. And plus, there's a new substation plan. That's where the star is. And the dark black lines going through are the existing transmission. And then going up to the upper left-hand corner are proposed new transmission. So what is the action that we need to do? If you would mind signing the petition that's over there, which asks that the Board of Supervisors ask Land Use Services to bring the policy 410 and its sections to the Planning Commission as soon as possible, and that also the Board of Supervisors would write a letter before the comment period ends stating their dissatisfaction with the DRECP. Tomorrow will be a number of us will be speaking to the Board of Supervisors at the public comment period asking for that. And then on March 1st, in this room, there will be a scoping period on the DRECP. So if you don't want any of that to come towards you, that kind of solar, did that again. Those are some steps you can take. Any questions?
One thing I think I failed to mention to Pat is that we have requested through Land Service that, well, she mentioned that there's options that are going to come back to the Board of Supervisors. Yes, that is true from what I understand, but we have asked them that one of the options should be leave it alone as it was written and get it to the commission. So hopefully that's going to work. But we need anybody that has the time tomorrow. The meeting starts at 9 o'clock for closed session. Public session usually comes in around 10 o'clock. Come and ask that 410 come back to the Board of back to the Board of Planning Commission as it was written with 410, if that's what you feel, and as soon as possible. So we really need your public input at that meeting tomorrow if you can make it. I'm sure if we have 2 or 3, they're going to get the message, but the more the merrier in this case. Okay, thank you.
It's a complex issue, but we're going to win.
David's going to get the light, and let me see what's next on the agenda. We got public comments, I think. Okay, public comment. First up, Ed Valorand. 3 minutes.
I'm Ed Valorand, a account holder in Joshua Basin Water District, and I am very upset with this increase that they want. Back in 2004, there was an increase in 29 pounds, and I disputed the assumptions there, gave the board in writing the reason I disputed it, and at the next meeting, we had a new general manager, and instead of getting a 10% raise, we got a 6% raise. My brother is a professional engineer who teaches water distribution back in Chicago. I don't know how many of you read my soapbox, but for 3 times I gave the general manager stuff in writing, which he ignored until the last meeting. He used $400 as his basis for the electronic meters and said they needed $2.5 million. At the last board meeting, he acknowledged that he met with 29 pounds, and the cost of 1-inch meters was $130, not $400, and it was $70 for 5/8. With your new requirement for fire, you need 3/4. That means that the rate is hitting us for over $1.7 million that we need. Basically, he validated the numbers that were in my soapbox. A second point, 29 pounds, I pulled the state data, 29 pounds, which is 1.5 times as large. Their manpower cost $500,000 less, and it's all in the office and their engineering area. And on a third point, the people at Joshua Basin Water District do not have, in my opinion, the appropriate licenses and certifications. 29 pounds, your people have a D5, which is the highest distribution, and they have a T3, and that's the general manager, the distribution manager, the operations manager. But in Joshua Tree, the general manager doesn't have any certification, and the distribution manager only has a D2, but yet the big part of the cost is the estimated cost to replace pipes. With only a D2, I question the validity of what they've done, and I believe everyone should protest, because I don't believe that they're qualified to do that study, and I think they're greatly inflated. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. David Fick. Oh, yeah, they're all over.
Hello, David Fick, Joshua Tree, and I'm not close enough? Or is it on? It's on, okay. David Fick, Joshua Tree. Most of my concerns have been mentioned by Pat and Mark regarding the 410 situation with the county. But to recap this, my concern is we've had 4 meetings regarding the Joshua Tree possible community plan, whatever they want to call it. And I was wanting to know what the status would be, and if Mark could ask land use, or was it planning, Terry Rahal planning, when is the Joshua Tree community plan update coming back to Joshua Tree? And I suppose eventually the 410 issue is approved at the same time the big development code is approved and the general plan is approved whenever they get around to it. But we've been, from what I understand, we've had 4 basic meetings on the Joshua Tree Community Plan update. The first 3 were probably having to be thrown out the window, and the last one is refugees from that consultant went to the other consultant, and this other consultant is much more on the ball than the previous one. So we need an update. The community wants an update. And that's about it.
Thank you, David. Gail Austin.
Hello, Gail Austin from Joshua Tree. I'm here to speak about the rate hike proposed by the Joshua Basin Water District. And water is one of our most precious commodities, and as a community, we need to support the district that collects and distributes our water. When I looked into why they were proposing a rate hike that is more than a cost of living increase, I found out that for the last 20 years, our water district was only raising water rates by a slim margin that was less than the cost of living increase. So now we have an aging infrastructure that is in need of replacement and an aquifer that is steadily losing water as we use more than we replace. How did this happen? Were they not thinking of the future? Were they purposely putting this burden on the next generation? Did they not realize what was going to happen? I don't think we'll ever know, but we are where we are now. The Board of Directors has the responsibility to run our water district in the most cost-efficient way, but they shouldn't have achieved this by essentially kicking these important needs down the road. If I buy a new car, I am ethically obligated to start a savings account for buying another car when that one is no longer usable, or I'll end up spending more by buying the next one on credit and paying payments plus interest. It's more expensive. Well, folks, we're in a situation now where we have to have steep rate hikes to pay for what occurred in the past. Past boards gave the district too small of a budget to take care of everything, so the district took care of what it could, and it didn't take care of everything. Please don't blame the current board or water district employees for the situation we are now facing. They're actually trying to fix the things that need fixing and give us the best possible clean water with the best possible delivery system. You can, however, get involved and educated, like this gentleman, about our water situation now and ensure that this and future board of directors keep the water as the main focus. If this board approves the rate hikes, they have the opportunity to be the board that put our water district back on track for further generations of water users. Most of us live here because we choose to live here. There are things about living in the desert that we love. To live in a constant drought area, we have the responsibility to ensure clean drinking water forever, if possible. We have the pleasure of living here, and we must take on the role of desert protectors. If that role includes paying more for water than someone who lives in the city, then we should be happy to do it. Cities have less pipe between houses, water that is replaceable, and the political clout to get it from wherever necessary. We don't. For those on fixed incomes and low incomes, this is a personal problem that we as a community need to fix. Their problem is not that the rates have to go up. Their problem is they don't have enough money. We need to find a way to help them pay their water bills, not stop the rate hikes. I want the current board to vote for the proposed rate increases, and I will personally be involved with ensuring that the money is spent for the good of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Next speaker, Al Marquez.
Al Marquez, Sunfair Community of Joshua Tree. First off, I would like to say that Joshua Tree has always been a depressed community, which means that the income levels in Joshua Tree aren't very high. But we have numerous communities within the CSA 20, which is county service area, which encompasses about 97, 98 square miles. And I just want to read some of the communities within Joshua Tree. And we have Joshua Tree Highlands, we have Joshua Tree Village, we have Friendly Hills, Monument Manor, Tortuga, Hollinger, Copper Mountain Mesa, Quail Springs Estates, Sunfair Community, Panoramic Heights, and Hidden Rivers. So we have approximately 9,700 inhabitants of this CSA 20 area. And the proposed rate increases, I've been involved with the Water District for the last 15 years, and I was on the Citizens Advisory Committee up until 2011. And I was perplexed with the Citizens Advisory Committee at that time. They were too close to the Board of Directors, and as I see it, they're too close to the Board of Directors now. And this increase of double digits for the next 5 years is very exorbitant because back in the, since 2006, the rates were single digits. And they promised to replace a lot of the pipelines in those days, and pipelines had never been replaced other than up there by Altaloma. But the only reason those pipelines were replaced is because the CAT Foundation was going to build that 2,700 homes over there, Section 33. But since then, no pipe replacement has been made. And the district has been collecting standby fees from all the property owners for years and years and years. There was a bond fund of $2 or $3 million that was supposed to go for a lot of the replacements in the district, including pipes, which were never done. Then all of a sudden now they want to go with a double-digit increase to replace pipes. They didn't replace them then. I don't think they're going to replace them now. So if anybody is interested, I have forms here for proposed rate increases, either for, if you're for the rate increase or against it. I'll give you these forms and you can go ahead and use them and make your comment to the Board of Water District on the 21st of this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. That concludes our comments, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for all coming. We had some good information tonight.